breathtaking than I ever thought possible. He's as tall as a 30-story building. I'm saying a prayer, George. A prayer for the whole world. Neither man nor his machines are able to stop this creature.
Let us call this creature Godzilla.
Yeah! Are y'all ready? Are y'all ready? What?
What is going on, people? LP2000 right back at you with another S Plus figure review. My God, I feel like it's been a long time since I've done an S Plus figure review. The last one I did was the S Plus 25 centimeter Legion from Gamera 2 Attack of Legion. But that was like almost a month and some change ago. So yeah, it's been a long time. But I'm back again in a big way, or a gigantic way, I should say. Today I'm doing the X Plus Gigantic Series Godzilla 1954 Yuji Sakai Standard Edition figure. Woo! That's a lot of words to cover. But this is a great piece, and this is the box. You know how we do things around here, so let's get into the box before we get into this figure. Because it is not much space up here because of these two giants here. But let's get into the box first, shall we? And, you know, typical artwork of the Gigantic series. I love it. The silhouette of Godzilla here on the front. X Plus, Godzilla 1954, the Sakai Yuji modeling collection, the Gigantic series here in Japanese. Yes, that's pretty much it. It's standard. You've seen it before. You know what it's all about. So that's pretty much it. With the legal jargon on the back, and let's boom. No box toss. Too big. Ain't trying to damage anything in here. So yes, this is the man of the hour. The newest addition to my favorite line of figures from X Plus. Of course, y'all know that already. The Gigantic series. Number five. Wow. Such an amazing piece. It really is. I'm glad I was able to get it for a good price through a friend of mine. So yes, this is really good. I really do enjoy this figure. Let's go into the backstory about this figure a little bit. Let's start with 2014 when the Gigantic Burning Godzilla, the second entry in the Gigantic series figure from S Plus, was released. Around that time after it was released, there were some pictures popping up online of a model kit of the Godzilla 1954. It was around 50 centimeters, and it was a kit made by the same people that sculpted the Gigantic GMK and the Gigantic Burning Godzilla from X Plus. The same kit maker sculpted those two figures. Or at least they sculpted the prototype that was used to make the figures for the X Plus Gigantic series. So around that time after the Burning Godzilla was released, pictures start popping up online on eBay of this kit, and I assume, and I'm sure some other folks out there also assumed that was going to be the next addition to the Gigantic series, you know, because the GMK was from the Millennium era, the Burning Godzilla was from the Heisei, so naturally we thought we was going to get a Showa Gigantic series figure be the next one. That wasn't the case, and actually we didn't see a Gigantic series figure for like a year and I think a month, I believe. But when we did get one, it was the Gigantic G2000. It wasn't the 54 or any other show of design. Fast forward a couple months, around early this year, they actually showed a picture of this figure, and they announced that it was going to be the next Gigantic series figure, the Yuji Sakai Godzilla 1954, and it was going to be released around, I guess, early summer or something like that. But they did a gigantic bait and switch. And instead, they brought forth the gigantic Godzilla 1962 from King Kong vs. Godzilla. So once again, we thought that this was going to be the next one, but they ended up doing something different, and they brought forth the gigantic 1962. To a lot of people's delight, I think the 62 was very, very more popular than the 54. Don't get me wrong, the 54 is popular also, but the 62, come on now, it's from King Kong vs. Godzilla, the most financially successful film in the Godzilla franchise. So a lot of people are really happy that they were bringing the 62 versus the 54. But I still want the 54 also. Even though I want the 62, I still want them to make the 54. And they announced around July of this year, it's around July of this year, that they were going to bring forth, finally, the 54 that they teased earlier this year. And that's pretty much the backstory of this figure. Let's go a little bit of statistics involving this figure. This is the 5th original release for the Gigantic series. You know, GMK was number 1, Burning Godzilla was number 2, the G2000 was number 3, the 62 was number 4. Of course, this is number 5. This is the second figure of a Showa Godzilla design. It's the 5th figure of the Yuji Sakai collection, courtesy of X Plus. You know, the first was the Yuji Sakai Godzilla 89, then the 91, then the Sakai GMK. The Sakai G2000, the Sakai GMK, and this is the 5th addition to the Yuji Sakai line, courtesy of X Plus. Just a little trivia there involving this figure. So, but as I'm looking at it right now, this really is a great piece. And normally, you know how I do things around here. I talk about the figure, I go over some details about it a little bit, and then I talk about the movie and the history behind it. But actually, I'm gonna do something different involving this review, because it really speaks for itself. You know what I mean? I've heard people online saying who got this figure that maybe it doesn't live up to Yuji Sakai standards. But going by what I see here, I think it does. I mean, I really do think it does. It really is an exquisite piece. It captures the prehistoric ferocity that was the Godzilla 1954, you know, whatever. And I've said this a million times. I have no problem saying it again here, that if ever a Godzilla design deserved to be a gigantic, it is of course the Godzilla 1954, because the premise of the Gigantic series was to have present Godzilla figures, big gigantic Godzilla figures, in his most powerful and most awesome form. And considering what they've done so far, you know, they've done a great job with their selection. The GMK, awesome. The Burning Godzilla, awesome. The G2000, awesome. The 62, awesome. And of course, you can't have the Gigantic series without the original. This is the alpha. This is the one that started it all. You know, if this film wasn't a success, or this design wasn't a success, there wouldn't have been a Godzilla series. So it all goes back to this one. Like I mentioned before, if ever a design needed to be a Gigantic series figure, it's the 54. Hands down, whether you like the film or not, whether you agree with the design or not, you can't deny the fact that this design deserved to be a Gigantic series figure. But going back to what I was saying about the review, I normally, like I said, talk about the history towards the tail end. But what I'm going to do, make this more a Gigantic series discussion and how this figure relates to the rest of the members of the Gigantic series. And that's what I'm going to talk about here. Before I get into the first comparison, because really it's going to be a size comparison in a way. The detail is very nice. You know what? I don't have the Rick Boy. I have the standard. The Rick Boy came with a mini bust of Godzilla having a train in his mouth, and his Japanese name, like on some, it was like his letters, Japanese letters on top of each other. And if you put the head with the train in his mouth together, it creates like a little, like a little base right there a little bit, which basically accents the figure. But whether you go for the standard or the Rick Boy, you can't go wrong with this figure. You really can't. They've done a great job. The eyes are popping. The attention to detail and the texture of the suit is present here. The prehistoric look of his dorsal plates. I mean, actually his feet, his tail being long, whatever. He stands at 17 inches tall, whatever. Just shade under the gigantic Burning Godzilla, which you'll see in a few seconds. But they done a great job with this. They really have. Like I mentioned before, I've seen some people online saying that this figure doesn't really capture the Yuji Sakai that we've known to see when it comes to X Plus figures. But I think they did a great job. I think they did. Of course, this was based off a kit, but I think they did a great job. They just translated the kit, or transformed the kit, excuse me, the resin kit into vinyl form. So this is great. It really is great. You know, toes popping, arms, claws popping, the fangs are popping, the eyes are popping, the rigid texture of his skin on the suit, this prehistoric look of his dorsal plates, the coloring on his dorsal plates. You know, mind you, it's in monochrome paint scheme, you know, black and white, but there's a little liberties involving like a little sort of grayish here on the dorsal plates. Have a more realistic look, but still keeping with the look of what we saw in the original film. So yes, this is really great. I'm glad I got it. This is such a welcome addition to the Gigantic series, and you know that about me. That's my favorite figures, a line of figures from X Plus, and I'm glad they finally gotten around to bring forth this Gigantic series figure. Of course, they've been kind of Gigantic series crazy this year because they have brought forth not one, but before this year is over with, they're going to have a total of 4 Gigantic series figures released this year. The 62, like I said, they reissued the Gigantic GMK in a darker Godzilla colors, traditional color scheme. Then they brought this one out, and I think next month from now, at the time of this recording, they're going to bring forth a reissue of the Gigantic Burner Godzilla, but it's going to be a frozen version. So yeah, X Plus has really been trying to make sure they get our money this year, you know. And but this is a great investment. It really is. If you love the 54, if you just love the film, love the design, this is the piece for you. You know, all due respect to the Train Biter and to the 30cm 54, even the SH Monster Arts 54 those are really good 54 pieces. But to me, I think this is the crown jewel. And if you love the 54, you should really add this to your collection. So let's get on and popping with the first size comparison. And here we go. The first size comparison, and of course, I gotta do it with the first in the Gigantic series line, the Gigantic GMK. And as you can see, they size well. Of course, it's not how Godzilla was looking in GMK in the film, but you know, the similarities are still there between these two. You know what I mean? Because in GMK, he was basically a possessed demon that was coming back, you know, in modern day Japan to punish people that have forgot about the sacrifices that people made during the Pacific conflict or World War II. So you add that element in there, besides the fact that he's possessed, you know, whatever. And you know, it's like I said, like I said before, it's one of my favorite Godzilla films. It's my wife's favorite Godzilla film. So basically, they just took the concept of the original 54, because in the original 54, he was basically just a reminder of what happens when you mess with nature. You know, if you those unforeseen consequences. That's why I think Godzilla represents consequences when it comes to the 54 film. But they just took that concept and turned it all the way up and gave him a more unholy, a really truly evil personification in GMK. So the correlation between these two designs, I think, is very fitting. You know, so yes, so that's pretty much it with the size comparison with number 1. So let's go with size comparison number 2. And which one should I get? You know what? Hold on one second. There you go. I know what to get. Here we go. Bear with me. All right. Here we go. All right. The third addition to the Gigantic series, of course, another Yuji Sakai piece, the Yuji Sakai Godzilla 2000 Rick Board Gigantic series. And there's really not much correlation between these two, except for the fact that Godzilla 2000 was, you know, that they allude back to the 54. That was the premise of the Millennium series. You know, all the films in this series were pretty much individual reboot tales, with the exception of one that all jump off the 54, kind of like how the Heisei did. So there's really no correlation between these two, except for the fact that this film kind of jumps off the 54. Even though they don't really allude that too much in the film, they don't really come out and say it, but they established that Godzilla has, you know, been around before. They don't acknowledge anything from majority of the Showa. They don't acknowledge anything from the Heisei. So in a roundabout way, you can pretty much assume, because I haven't seen the Japanese version of Godzilla 2000 yet, but I've seen the regular version, the American version, lots of times. And I don't recall them saying anything definitive about anything involving the 54, but you can pretty much assume that that's what they were talking about, you know, about Godzilla being an established force of nature, whatever. And also a correlation between these two is the fact, like I mentioned before in early on, that we thought that this 54 was going to be the next Gigantic Series figure after the Gigantic Series Burning Godzilla. But we didn't get an announcement of this guy coming out until like a year or some change later. In my opinion, this is speculation, this is my opinion. I think that X Plus tried to get this 54 as the next Gigantic Series figure, but I guess time went on, you know, because we've heard stories of X Plus trying to acquire licenses to get these monsters done. Sometimes they're easy to obtain and sometimes they're not. I'm thinking that they probably ran into trouble with getting this license. So they had to, you know, give us something, because I, for one, was always on every month on the edge of my seat looking for some kind of Gigantic Series announcement after the Burning Godzilla. I was wondering what they could do to top that one, because that is a magnificent piece. You know what I mean? So I think they brought forth this figure just kind of whet our appetites, if that makes sense. And then they got back on track on, you know, giving us more Gigantic Series figures. Because like I said, this one is the smallest of the Gigantics, but they had to give us something. That's what I think what happened. You know, they were able to bring this as a Gigantic Series figure. Really, it's the smallest of the Gigantics, but it could really pass for an oversized 30 centimeter figure. But I think they did that just to compensate for the fact that they didn't have any other Gigantic Series figures ready to be produced at that particular time. That's why I think what happened. Of course, it's speculation, but that's why I think what happened. So yeah, this is great. Size comparison number 2. All right. So let's go with size comparison number 3. And I got a big boy coming. Here we go. As a matter of fact, there you go. Here we go. Yes, the whole bait and switch thing. Let me move my blanket up here. All right, bait and switch. Yes, and I say bait and switch like I said. We thought earlier this year that this was going to be the next Gigantic Series figure this year, but it ended up surprising all of us when they decided to bring forth this guy. And of course, the correlation is very, very, you know, it's obvious. They're both Showa figures. They're both Showa designs of the Gigantic Series. The only Showa designs of the Gigantic Series. I got another size comparison, which I hope will be that will illustrate. Hopefully, they won't be alone when it comes to Gigantic Series, and you'll see that later on. But yes, the correlation between these two Showa figures, but it also illustrates a difference in tone that the Showa series went through. You know what I mean? Where you have the serious, gritty, dark, serious story of the original 54, as well as 55 to a certain extent, to the campy, you know, fun Showa series that took over the majority of the films in the Showa series. So you really see a shift in tone when you have these two together. Dark and serious, fun and campy, you know. But these two basically exemplify what is so great about the Showa series, in my opinion. So in addition to them being Showa figures and the shift in tone between the two suits, as well as in shift in tone in the direction the Showa series went, it's present here, you know. And also just it demonstrates like the changes that Godzilla went through between his 54 film as well as 55 to the 62. You know, he no longer has 4 toes here in 62. He no longer has ears. They went more of a reptilian look in 62. His dorsal plates are more rounded around the tips of his dorsal plates, where he doesn't have a more prehistoric look. And he got really kind of chunky, kind of bulky. He slimmed down in the next film, but you know, this is a really baggy suit, where the 54 was, I wouldn't say it's baggy, but it wasn't as chunky as the 62. But yes, that's it. There you go. So yes, size comparison number 3. Yes, these two are so awesome. Really, really are. 54, 62. Showa at its finest. All right, so let's go with size comparison number 4. And you know what's coming next? Oh, yes, my favorite of the Gigantic series. And I think I mentioned this on Facebook, I think, last week, that if I had to rank them, considering that I, you know, seen pictures of them, and now I got this one in person, and don't get me wrong, I love the 54, but if I had to rank them as far as like being awesome, or my favorite, The gigantic series Burning Godzilla is number 1. The 62 is number 2, ironically. GMK is number 3. The 54 is number 4, ironically. And the G2000 number 5. I mean, as far as like my favorites, I have reasons for them or whatever, which I don't want to go into right now because I don't want to make the video longer than it has to be. But yes, these two really have a great correlation, a direct correlation, if you will, because Destroyer, Godzilla's Destroyer, 1995, that film really alludes to the 54. With the creation of Destroyer, from the oxygen destroyer that destroyed this Godzilla, everything that we saw on screen really goes back to the 54 film, more so in 84 in my opinion, especially more than Godzilla 2000 or Godzilla Final Wars or any film that jumps off the 54 or GMK. I think Godzilla Destroyer really does a great job connecting a film to the 54. And also, like I mentioned before in other videos, please check out my video review of my actually a re-up of this figure, the gigantic series Burning Godzilla. It's called the S Plus Gigantic Series Figure Re-Up, where I touch on my Kaiju fantasy booking involving a fight between these two. I won't go into word for word what I said, but I will rehash it here just a little bit to give you summarization. That the original concept of the final film of the Heisei era was to have Godzilla against Ghost Godzilla, or Godzilla versus Ghost Godzilla, where the ghost of the original Godzilla of 1954 would come back and materialize into a flesh and blood Godzilla. He would then do battle with the current Godzilla. So basically, when you had the two together, it kind of like demonstrates what would have happened if Toho went in that direction. Because I said before, that's the one storyline I wish they would have gone into or tried to tap into, but they never did. A Godzilla versus Godzilla storyline. And considering how they proposed that concept, I think that would have been a perfect time. But since in the previous film, Godzilla was Mechagodzilla 2 and Godzilla was Space Godzilla, Toho felt that Godzilla faced too many versions of himself, so that's why they didn't go with that plan. But I think, that would have been a good way to go, just to see what would have happened. Because like I said, I don't think we're ever going to see that, the Godzilla versus Godzilla storyline, but that would have been a perfect time. But when you had these two together, you can always wonder what would have happened if the show of Godzilla, this 54 prehistoric ferocious monster, would have done battle with the current modern day Heisei version, and just see these two Godzillas go at it. It's one of those things like, what if, but when you have these two gigantic series, these two gigantic series figures together, it leaves your imagination open, and it's got my imagination open, to be honest with you. So yes, besides the fact that they have a direct correlation between the two films, it's really good to see, it's awesome to see these two together. And it makes me wonder how I'm going to position this guy, because he does require a lot of space, with his tail being long, as you see here with the gigantic Burning Godzilla. But hey, those are good problems to have, you know what I mean? So yes, that's the fourth size comparison. So let's go with the final size comparison. Let's see, where can I put him? There you go. All right, and here we go with the final size comparison. Let's put the 54 over here and go with another Showa version, 64. And of course, this is not an S Plus figure. Of course, you've seen this big, beautiful guy, or figure in my videos before. This is the M1 1964 Godzilla from Mothra vs. Godzilla. My favorite Godzilla design and my favorite Godzilla movie. Y'all know that. And I brought these two out here, or at least I brought this one out here, excuse me, as a size comparison. Also to show you that, like I said, this was originally a Yuji Sakai kit. You know what I mean? And I'm thinking at some point, we're going to get a 64 gigantic series figure. It's only a matter of time. In my opinion, I think that S Plus won't stop until they give us a majority of Godzilla designs. Because even though it's debatable amongst fans, almost any incarnation of Godzilla will be a great candidate for the gigantic series. I would even love a gigantic 1967 from Son of Godzilla. Yes, I would like that. I do like that design. I'm not the only one out there that likes that design. So I'll be fine with a 67 gigantic Godzilla. But I think that at some point we're going to see a 64. And of course, this kit was an M1 kit. Once again, it was sculpted by Yuji Sakai. You know what I mean? So you never know. Maybe they can strike a deal. X Plus can strike a deal with M1, or at least get somebody to sculpt a figure like this, you know, to use as a prototype for Gigantic Series 64. Like I mentioned, it's only a matter of time. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. And when it happens, I'm gonna be front and center, ready to pre-order that thing. So, but yes, that's pretty much it with all the size comparisons. And on another note, like I said, Mothra vs. Godzilla is my favorite film of all time in the Godzilla franchise. And honestly, I equate this version of Godzilla with the 54. You know what I mean? With Mr. Haruo Nakajima portraying Godzilla in both films. I believe both of his performances are very similar in both these films. You know, with 55, Godzilla Raised Again and King Kong vs. Godzilla, you know, his performance was more vibrant. Because, you know, he was fighting, you know, really, really ferocious monsters in Anguirus and King Kong. So he was more vibrant and dynamic, and he had more of a human type of characteristics, especially in King Kong vs. Godzilla. But in Mothra vs. Godzilla, he went back to the methodical, slow, stoic movements of Godzilla, of the 54. So that's why I equate both the 54 with the 64. You know, even though they're 10 years apart, and even though they do share a little bit of similarities, you know, whatever, that's why I equate both of them together, you know. So, yeah, so that's pretty much it with the size comparison. So I hope you enjoyed that, because I enjoyed looking at these. But pretty much it. Excuse me. That's pretty much it with size comparisons. And you know what? I'm going to wrap this review up like I mentioned before. I don't want to talk about the film too much. You know what? Godzilla's birthday is right around the corner on November 3rd, sometime next week. Yeah, next week, because today is October 30th. So his birthday is coming up, I believe, would it be, I think Thursday. Yeah, I think Thursday is his birthday. So I may do a discussion involving Godzilla 1954. So I don't want to go into that. Yeah, I don't want to make this video too long. But yes, the more of the review, the more of this video, get this figure. If you enjoy it, if you enjoy the film, if you love the design, this really is a must-have piece, you know, whatever. I know the price tag can be a little bit questionable, whatever, but if you got the money to get it, please get it. You will not be disappointed. So that pretty much concludes my review of the X Plus Gigantic Series Godzilla 1954 Yuji Sakai Standard Edition. If you have any questions, holler me down in the comment section, or hit me up on Facebook via Mark Calloway. We definitely go from there. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for hanging in there with me. I know I had a lot to say, but it's so much to cover. You know what I mean? It's so much to cover involving the Gigantic Series. As a matter of fact, it's so much to cover involving X Plus figures to begin with. You know, because I'm trying to get this information out there so y'all can be very mindful when you pre-order these things, and you know, because like I mentioned before, these things are expensive. I don't want to see people waste good money. And I don't want to recommend a product that I don't think is worth the money, but this product is. So like I said, if you love the 54, if you definitely love the movie, or even if you don't love the movie or whatever, I still think that every Godzilla fan should have a representation of the 1954 Godzilla in their collection, because that's where it all started from, you know, whatever. So without this guy, there wouldn't have been all the great monsters that we have come to love. But if you're going to go for a quintessential 54 Godzilla piece, this is the one for you. All right, so that's pretty much it. So thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it, and I will see y'all again on the next figure and move review. All right? Y'all take it easy.